And the sister company to Honua is CN Renewables, and I'm their forester. When I came in 1996, it was to convert the sugarcane lands on Hamakua and then Ka'u to plantation forest. So that was my job. I started a company to do that. I worked with Kamehameha Schools and then Parker Ranch to do that. And it's primarily those trees that we're now harvesting and will be replanting for the plant. We have a 30-year plan as far as making sure that the resource is renewable. The trees on average will grow 7 years. Any planted tree will grow about 7 years, depending on where it is, and then be harvested and replanted. So it really depends on which land we're talking about, if it's Kamehameha Schools or Parker or state or county, depending on where the land is. It's more the owner that will dictate how it is managed and how it'll be replanted. But for our plant to be sustainable, there will be harvesting and then there will be replanting.
Are there problems with ungulates or wild animals? Is there a problem in your forest? Do you allow hunters to go there? What are your policy, rules, regulation?
It will depend on whose land it is. Kamehameha Schools have their own set of rules. Parker Ranch have their own set of rules. We have single-use leases to grow trees. What we have done previously on Hamakua was establish in the Pawila area, we established a hunting club, and that worked very well with meeting with and forming a hunt club that pretty much self-regulated on the land. They don't do any damage to the trees, so we're happy to have hunter-gatherers in the forest. There's no problem with that, and there's no good reason not to be there. We don't build fences. We are quite happy to work with community on those issues, but the landowner, Kamehameha Schools, for example, will require some, or did in the past, and I assume that's the same today, that they would require insurance, and so the hunt club as a club would have to carry that insurance.
But you do have with state lease land?
No, we don't.
We don't. It's just Kamehameha Schools and Parker Schools, so
Correct.
You would have to look at the lease agreement that you have, what it would say
Correct.
about hunting.
And as I said, ours is a single-purpose lease. We did the initial planting. That all came through. I was responsible for that. And we planted about 10 million keiki to get the trees done. The seed I have in my possession, the improved seed that we will do the next crop with, it'll take about 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah. Well, my question is
Yeah.
actually, so you said that you encourage wild mammal, no problem.
Yeah,
Because they don't damage the keiki.
correct.
Well, that's very interesting. So you don't need to fence them. How amazing! Will
No.
you please tell the DLNR?
No, we've had this discussion before, and
Because, right, our forests are being fenced because they're saying the wild mammals are damaging the forests, especially with their new plantings. So that's interesting to me.
And we like the cattle in the trees because they keep the grass down. So what we see on Parker Ranch
Perfect.
is an agroforestry system where you can have the the cattle among the planted trees, and you see a lot of pigs in the gulches and the native forest areas.
Well, that's interesting because this is what we've been fighting is that the game animal are good for the forest.
Right.
They manage the wild grasses,
Yep.
remove fire fuel. So that's very interesting. You're actually appreciating them.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
There was some questions raised about the toxicity of burning eucalyptus trees in the plant. So I have a few questions regarding that. I guess are you aware of any concerns in burning?
I'm not. The minutes I read talked about possible toxicity in the albizia that had been poisoned. So if the albizia has been poisoned, there could be some remnant chemical that goes in, but we would have to test that. We haven't got access. We haven't been invited to use any albizia like that. I'm a scientist. I have a PhD in forestry. My instinct tells me that we would not find any trace elements. I think it would be. I think the tree would have used it up, to be honest. But we would test it if we were going to get any.
So currently, the plan is to burn eucalyptus in.
That's what we have access to at the moment. Yes, we have lease. We have a Kameme Schools lease in Kau, and we have the Parker Ranch lease. So that's our primary focus right now.
Is eucalyptus usually used as a fuel to burn traditionally?
It is. Traditionally, it's one of the highest value papers in the world. There are about 600 different eucalyptus species in their native Australia. And it is one of the most widely planted hardwood species around the world. So Brazil has millions of acres, and South Africa, where I'm from, has millions of acres. It's a very widely planted and studied tree, but it does depend. They vary very much by elevation and temperature and moisture and things like that. So it becomes a matrix of where to plant which tree. But eucalyptus, because it's so well known and studied and grows so well, as you can see outside, that's definitely where we're going to start. But we're after, with this particular project, we're after the BTUs of the tree, the burnability, not so much the look of the table or the structural content.
And so in terms of the transition period between cutting down a tree and replanting, are you doing clear cutting and then mass replanting, or how would that process work?
It would be field by field. So we need to have about 20,000 acres under cultivation. So we need to farm, and it's with this type of forestry, and we've done both over the years. We've planted millions of koa for Kameme Schools and sandalwood for the Queen Emma Foundation. But with production plantation forest, it's field by field, and as the field is planted, as it's harvested, within 3 to 6 months we would be replanting. Now, having said that, some of the areas where we will harvest, the landowner has to make a decision. So in Pauilo, there's a potential for an area that is going to go to a community group and not come to us, in which case they don't want it to be replanted. But where we have access and the right to replant, it'll be very quick.
Really quickly, are those 20,000 acres the capacity needed to have a sustainable amount of wood coming into the power plant to continue production continuously?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
That's the measurement here.
Grayson, District 6, is fertilizer or herbicides going to be used?
There will be probably, as we plant, we will likely use a pre-emergent just to hold the weeds down while the trees get a start. But if the trees, most of the site prep is simply plowing a bed about as big as this table I'm sitting at. A bedding plow will come and build a mound of earth in a row, and we turn the soil, cultivate it, and then put down one herbicide. And at planting, we always said, and it hasn't changed, about a Vienna sausage can full of fertilizer, and that's just to give the trees a start. But they will grow on their own with what's in the soil. It's just one application. Yep.
One more question. Are you guys testing the streams? During this process?
what stream? I'm not sure I understand the question. That it would depend on where the streams are. Are we testing them for? Are you implying for runoff, or what? What are we testing for?
Yeah, possibly runoff. We used to go catch River Opie and Oopu and a lot of those streams, and so I'm curious what kind of impact that might have on the streams.
Yeah, they're quite strict regulations that we don't plant up to or through streams. So, in general, the trees filter the rain and stop soil runoff. If that's the answer, but no, we haven't tested, but I don't see the amount being enough to, it's not like a golf course. We don't apply chemicals like that. It's a small amount of fertilizer in the hole that you put the tree into.
After you cut down the trees, there's the stumps to deal with. So what happens to the stumps? Are they just cultivated back into the earth?
Yeah, we traditionally what happens with eucalyptus is it's in that bedding, the soil is piled back onto the same row, and that will smother any regrowth. Now, eucalyptus have the ability to regrow out of the stumps, so that's almost the preferred way, because if there's good regrowth, then we don't need to plant, we don't need to do anything, we just let it regrow. And it would grow like a bush. There might be 5 or 10 saplings, and we would leave 1 or 2 and just break the rest. So it's a very minimal, for us it's economically good because we don't have to use any chemicals. So regrowth is good. Where we only have a few stumps, then we would replant as well. But the stumps, when we have, in the past we've done, there was concern some years ago about stumps remaining on the ground, and so we did some experiments where we killed this stump. We did spray it with a herbicide, and the smallest stumps were gone in about 2 to 3 years, and the bigger ones were 4 or 5 years, and they rot away, especially on the Hamakua side. Kona side would take longer because it's dry, but on the wet side, they rot away within a few years. Where I'm from, Zululand, South Africa, we were approached after plowing a field to plant eucalyptus by local farmers who wanted to farm peanuts, and that seemed like a good solution because peanuts are nitrogen fixing. They keep the weeds down, and they were getting about a ton per hectare, so about half a ton an acre of peanuts. And I always wanted to do that here, but we've never quite managed to find a farmer who have a peanut farmer, to be honest. It would be a nice idea if you know anybody.
In terms of carbon offset from the plant and the forest, is it a completely net balanced type system? We had consultants from Australia recently, and what they found is ultimately it's just a matter of time, because we would be harvesting the trees we would harvest now on Hamakua are quite big. We planted them in the late 1990s, so they're 20 years old, and some of them are quite large, 20 some inches big, and they're holding a lot of carbon. The saplings we put in are going to be small, but as they grow, they will compensate. And when we reach a sustainable plateau, it'll be neutral. The other part about the carbon is that if you think about it, I'll tell you, is that there's about as much wood above the ground as there is below the ground. So even if you harvest at ground level, you've got all the carbon that's captured in the roots, and that stays and it rots away. And then that becomes nutrients for the next crop. So if you were to harvest everything all at once, we would be we would be at a below level, whatever the word is,
But over time, it will balance out, and then it will be
So
sustainable.
over time, does the soil level also grow as?
Yes. Yeah, we did studies when I first started, because there was concern about the nutrient levels of the old sugarcane lands, and so much of the topsoil had been broken away. But we did study it and found that it was about an inch a year of topsoil that was building up. Now, I don't think it just goes on forever, but there is, because the trees, these eucalyptus, lose so many leaves, they break down into.
Sorry, last question.
Compost.
Oh, yes, for the transport between the forest and the plant, I've heard concerns that it's many miles, maybe 30, and it would require like 20 trucks a day, something big.
Yeah.
Could you give us some numbers on that?
Yeah, it's between 20 and 30 loads a day. So we calculate about 10 trucks, depending on the distance. So if it's Kau, it's perhaps only 2 trips a day. If it's just outside of Pepakeo, then it's 3 or 4 trips a day. So there's more loads that can be done. But it is a significant amount of wood that has to move. I live in Waimea, so I drive to Hilo, and I drive to Kona, and I drive to Hilo, and I had a conversation the other day with Kevin Baylog of Deleuze Trucking, and was amazed at how many trucks he was telling me are on the road. So I don't think our trucks are going to make. We will use only small contractors, or only contractors to do that trucking, but I don't think you're going to notice a big shift in what we see. I mean, there is more traffic, but as one of the speakers said earlier, that everything, I believe it was Abraham, all our goods come in on boats and ferries, and that's how we get all our food for the most part. So the trucks are there. We will add some, but we're not going out and buying new trucks. We have bought trailers that are specifically designed to be safe to transport logs, but the trucks are here already and moving goods every day, to be honest.